Hey there, everybody. PTPOP here, leading you out of the rabbit hole, one grain of truth at a time. And today I'm going to be talking about the college lie, a step-by-step breakdown of the scam we all fell for. It's going to be a lot of fun. Now, I know not everybody that watches my show went to college, but a lot of us did. And I think if you have any self-awareness at all while you're in the midst of it, you kind of suss that it's not quite what they told you it would be. So let's kind of go back in time a little bit here. So you're 17, you're full of dreams, acne, and bad advice, and the whole world tells you there's just one path to success. That's college. Not just any college, mind you, the right one. You're on this quest to find just the right school to go to, right? The prestigious one, the one that makes your parents beam with pride and your high school guidance counselor cry tears of joy. I was there. Mr. Starkey was my guidance counselor. And we sat down quite a bit to talk about what I was going to do after high school. And, I was excited about it. Both my parents went to college. All three of my siblings went to college. My uncle went to college. My mother's mother went to college and became a school teacher, which was unheard of at her time in life. And so college was the golden ticket. It was the golden goose. It was the answer to everything. But what no one tells you is that you can't speak a good English when you go to college. College isn't a golden ticket. It's a velvet-lined trap. And they don't sell you an education. They sell you a fantasy wrapped in ivy-covered walls, red brick-lined streets, and a crushing student debt. And it's been this way for a while. Now, I'm going to do a rant about how college is a lie. But don't get me wrong. I had a blast in college. I had a great time. I partied. I drank. I dated, I fell in love. I did a lot of fun things. I met a lot of fun people. I joined a fraternity and I had a blast. I had a good time. But I didn't learn anything in college that has helped me in the real world, quite sincerely, other than drinking beer. Because one thing you're going to find when you get out into the corporate world, it may have changed now since COVID and everybody's working from home. The one thing I did learn that helped me was join the fraternity, learning to drink beer so you could socialize with your boss at the local TGIFs after work on Friday night. Other than that, college was a waste of time. I have some great memories. When I go back to my campus, I just get all nostalgic and filled with just nostalgia and good times, and I wish I could be back and all that stuff. But college in and of itself, what it's designed for, is designed to prepare you for the real world. It's designed to give you a degree in a field of study that prepares you for a job and a career in that field of study, but it doesn't. But don't get me wrong, college is a lot of fun. You can do a lot of fun things. You'll meet a lot of fun people. I met a lot of great women, met a lot of great guys. I dated, I have fun, one of the best memories of my life. But college is not meant to be a youth resort. It's a very expensive youth resort. You spend thousands and sometimes hundreds of thousands of dollars just to go and party on campus, learn to drink beer, hang out with people you're dating, and then go to class. Now, keep in mind, when my parents went to school, the war, World War II, was just ending, had just ended. And, my father went to school on the GI Bill. He didn't have to pay for school. He got a degree in journalism. I believe my dad wanted to be a writer. I don't have any concrete proof of that, but I remember my mother being very demeaning and condescending to the man about, you're going to be a writer. Why don't you go get a real job? Sober up and get a real job. She was could be a very emasculating woman. And he never pursued it because he was saddled with a sales job at the Cleveland Press, 4 screaming kids at home and a nagging wife. And my mother could be a banshee. But he had a degree and he got a job out of school as a vet. And it was very prestigious thing to get a job back then and to have a degree, all those things. Post-war veteran, all that stuff. But what you get today is completely different. It's not a degree, it's a subscription service you can't cancel, a monthly bill that outlives your dreams. And so let's break it down. Now, I know a lot of you who went to school recently who are considerably younger than me. You're at least $100,000 in debt. Many of you are saddled with severe debt that you may never get paid off. You could, but it's going to be very hard. I went through the same thing. Now, I'll tell you what I went through. When my siblings went to school, I may not be completely right on this, but I'm pretty sure all 3 of my siblings had to work to get through school, and they got financial aid, and they did not have any debt. The reason they got financial aid and didn't have to take out loans was because my father, who was the only source of income, was unfortunately a severe alcoholic, and we are very poor. We were impoverished. We had no money at home. My family was on food stamps, assistance, financial assistance from the county and the whole thing. So they got to go to school for free, for the most part, though I know my sister and my brother specifically worked their way through school. I think my brother was a cook at Perkins, and my sister was at International House of Pancakes, and she made money babysitting, things like that. Now, when I went to school in 1984, it was a different situation. My mother had divorced my father. She had gone to work in a factory. She had not a great income, but she was making enough money where we didn't qualify for financial aid anymore, and I had to find a way to pay for school. But Mom couldn't afford to pay for anything. She didn't have any money in the bank. She had a little bit of money, but not enough to pay for school at the time. So we had to apply for financial aid. I got a small amount of financial aid, I think, for my first year. But I had to apply for loans. I applied for government loans and I applied for commercial loans. And I remember the day I went in to apply for my commercial loans. I don't remember if they also handled the federal loans, but I went into a bank at the time. It was called National City Bank. And I sat down with a loan officer with my mother. And the man sat down with the paperwork and explained the whole thing to me. And that's when the light went off. The man explained that this was a loan and I had to pay it back. And here are the terms. Here was the interest rate. Here's how the interest rate would accumulate. Here's the deferment schedule if you needed to defer it after you graduate and you can no longer, you can't find work. He explained you didn't have to start paying on it till you had graduated. And he went over the whole thing. They just didn't slip me a paper and say, here, you want $10,000? Okay, here you go. It was all laid out and explained to me in simple, straightforward English. I'll never forget it. And I signed up for the loans. But I remember saying to the guy, I said, you mean I got to pay this back? This isn't financial aid. He goes, no, this isn't financial aid. This is a student loan that you're going to have to pay us back. And I don't remember how I had something through Sallie Mae through the federal government. So when I hear all these kids here on YouTube and on TikTok complaining about they're saddled with $100,000 in debt, I understand their frustration because when I graduated, I had $10,000 in debt, which is the equivalent to about $25,000 today. And when I first got out of school, I was only making $5 an hour. I was a night auditor at a hotel, and I was making no money. I was living at home with my mom, and I didn't find a real job until 1990. It took me almost 2 years to find a job that paid enough money to allow me to pay back my student loans and have a car and all those things. But the problem is that I have with the kids that are complaining about their student loans is that they knew what they were getting into. Okay, when you sign on the dotted line, they explain the stuff to you. Bank regulations demand that they disclose everything to you. They disclose it verbally and they disclose it to you in writing before you sign anything. Because if they don't, they could get sued and they could get all kinds of fines from the government, things like that. So I know for a fact, if there's somebody out there on YouTube or TikTok saying, I didn't know this is what I was signing up for, that's a bold-faced 100% lie. Maybe you just did it because mom and dad said to do it. Maybe I don't know what happened, but I knew exactly what I was in for. Okay. The thing that none of us knew, you young kids now, and what I didn't know, is how hard it was to find a job. They make it sound like once you go to school, get that degree, you're going to be just living on easy street. You're going to walk out. I really thought when I graduated, I would walk into some company, say, I got a degree. They go, oh my God, really? Oh, a degree from a high university in communications? Here's $30,000. Come work for us now. Now, $30,000 was a lot of money back then in 1988. I didn't start making that kind of money, $30,000, until like 1994 or 95. I didn't know if I was making that. No, I didn't start making in the 30s until 1997. It took me almost 9 years, or not 9 years, 7 years before I started making really real good money. So it's a lie that the degree automatically equates to lots of money. It doesn't equate to six figures. It doesn't even equate to $40,000 a year anymore. You're lucky if you're making 32 grand, and 32 grand today is nothing. You can't live off of that. You can't move out of the house unless you get a roommate or two roommates. 32 grand for me in 1997 was more than enough money to own a condo, have a car, pay all the bills, save some money, put some money in the 401k. Today, what they're paying kids is a lie. That's a lie. It's a bold-faced lie, but the bold-faced lie is that they make it sound like degree equates to money. The degree equates to a job. It does not in any way, shape, or form. They do not guarantee you a job. They do not guarantee you a salary, and yet they're more than happy to put you hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt so the president of the university can kick back on some tropical island in the off season, during summer break, with his or her leather mistress and have a party. They're selling you pipe dreams. They're selling you lies. They're having you chase the wind. Now, some people do flourish from their degree, but it's usually somebody who majored in something like medicine or law or something that is a substantial degree. Your family and culture will tell you have to go to college to be successful. That's the sacred mantra drilled into your skull since you were 5. Not figure out what you love, not learn a trade. Nope, college or bust, right? Now, no one ever said to me, you got to figure out what you want to do or what you love. But I knew I loved art, okay? So the first 2.5 years, I was an art major. But your parents, your teachers, your grandma, your dog are all chanting the same line. Get that degree, honey. That's the only way out. Well, spoiler alert, it's not, okay? The second thing that happens is recruiters come marching into your school from local universities. College recruiters descend on your school like a sales team from a multi-level marketing cult. It's like Primerica has an Amway have descended upon your school. Sleazy, well-dressed, well-spoken young people to seduce you into coming to their school. Our campus offers beautiful things. Look at these smiling students in the brochure, and they always give you these shiny brochures and things like that to seduce you into coming to school. Now, you do have experiences in college that are freaking blast. I had a lot of fun in college. I got drunk, I got laid, I chased women, I dated, I fell in love, I joined a fraternity, I had lots of fun. But that doesn't mean anything today, okay? Now, I'm 60. I'm near retirement age. They're great memories, but it didn't give me a foundation to go find a job. And what I'm going to do today is I'm going to show you the further steps here of what they do to get you to come into college. Now, college recruiters descend upon your school like sales teams, as I said. And it's eerily similar to the military recruiters who show up in uniform, promising you adventure, fun, and discipline. And overseas, even in the military, it's all about having fun. You're going to go to Germany, and you're going to sit at a base, and you're going to eat bratwurst and drink beer. No, you're going to learn to kill people. They don't tell you that. They don't tell you you're going to end up in Afghanistan or Iraq or something like that, shooting poor people. College recruiters, they promise freedom, future, and a Starbucks on every squad. Or I'm sorry, not every squad, every quad. That's your dorm. No one talks about debt or depression or the 50% dropout rate. There's a huge dropout rate in college. The financing fantasy is massive, okay? Now, I'm going to show you my college transcripts here in a second, so hang out here with me for a second. I'll show you what classes I took. But most of the people I grew up with didn't have a lot of money. I grew up in not an impoverished area, but not everybody had money. Now, the financing fantasy is a big one. Parents pitch in, banks circle like vultures. Sally Mae slides a contract across the table like it's a timeshare. Sign here. We'll own your life, and they do. They own your life. Some kids fund their entire education through loans because nothing says adulthood like starting your life $100,000 in debt with zero income. And that's exactly what happens. Now, when I graduated in June of 1988, I was saddled with $10,000 in student loan debt, both Sally Mae and commercial loans through what turned out to, which was National City Bank, and it's now PNC. I had $10,000 in student loans, and I kept deferring them because I couldn't find work. Now, the student loans, they allow you to defer them up to so many times or so many months or something like that. You have to keep writing in and say, hey, I still don't have work. I have to defer them. And the further out you defer them, I don't remember if the interest accumulates. That's all another story. So you get deep in debt. Today, kids, I was in debt $10,000, which is the equivalent of about $25,000 to $30,000 in today's money. But kids today are in debt up to $100,000, $200,000 just for a regular degree. We're not talking a medical degree. We're not talking anything real scientific. Now, fourth thing that happens, you've got to pick the perfect school. You've got to decide. It depends on your grades, whether you get to go to private or public, in-state or out-of-state, city campus or country club. I went through all of this. I looked at, was going to stay in Ohio. I looked at Bowling Green, Kent State, High University, University Akron. University Akron was out because I've always felt that Akron is just the butthole of Cleveland. I checked out Bowling Green, and the campus was boring. It was flat. I had no interest in it. I looked at Kent State. Kent State seemed uninspiring and dull. I ended up selecting a high university primarily because I loved the campus and I had a lot of contacts there. My brother lived outside of town there with his wife and his kids. Or he had one daughter at the time, I believe. I don't remember how old they were, but I know I had one. I had my niece. And my whole family had gone there. My mom and dad met there in 1949. All three of my siblings went there. I had an uncle that went there. The whole family. They should name a building after us. So I chose a high university, but it's a major decision based on what? School colors, the mascot. In my case, family went there. So what? So what that they went there? I went there. I was basing it all off of nostalgia. I wasn't basing it off of a good education. My education I received there in art was inferior. And how did I know it was inferior? I'll tell you about it in another time, but I took art classes at a community school in Arizona, Chandler Gilbert Community College. I took one drawing class from an art teacher there. I learned things I didn't even know about drawing there from one guy. And I never learned any of these things at a high university. And, you've got 30 days to decide whether you'll spend the next 4 years and most of your money. So you come into your junior year, you're thinking about college, but by your senior year, they're really pushing you. And you've got to make a decision quick. Financial decisions, where you're going to live, where you're going to go to school. So in the fifth step, you've got to, you pick your school. I picked a high university. You've got to register for classes. So you log in to register for your introduction to real life. Classes end up with, as I'll show you here, my transcripts, you end up taking classes because you have no idea what to take. You have no clue. They give you a course catalog for let's say you've decided you're going to, in my case, I studied art. But what do you take? You're going to take electives. You got to take your core classes. And some people sign up for like the art of basket weaving and philosophy of dirt just to fill the electives. half of your required classes are already full by the time you get there. But hey, you get another shot next semester. And that's what they do, is they dangle this carrot in front of you for 4 years to stretch it out, because if you don't have all of your credits after 4 years and you don't have enough to graduate, you've got to stay a fifth year. Some people stay a sixth year. And they keep it very complex, so you constantly are stuck in this cycle of having to take classes. Step 6, freshman orientation. So I selected a high university, and they had this thing called freshman orientation, where you get to go for a weekend and you stay in a dorm with a bunch of other kids that are about to attend a high university. And I went down. I don't remember much about it other than I stayed in the dorm in the convocation center. The convocation center is where the basketball team plays. It's a big, giant, it's like a stadium. It is not like a stadium. It is a stadium. It's a big, round building. And there's this gorgeous girl I got to know named Helen. I'll never forget her. I never knew what happened to her after our freshman orientation. But they basically, what they do is they gather you up like little ducks, and you follow some leader around the campus, and they give you a tour of the campus, and they show you all the different greens and the cafeterias and the movie theater uptown. Unplug my headset. Hold on a second here. I'm back in business, people. I spend lots of money on equipment here. They're like $50 headphones. And so the whole orientation is designed to seduce you. It's like a lover who's trying to show you all the things they have to offer you. Please come live with me. Please come and love me. Marry me. Be my mate forever. Because I've got fancy restaurants. I've got fancy cafeterias and a beautiful campus and red brick streets and all that baloney. So welcome to college. They basically say, here's a branded water bottle and an awkward icebreaker where you chant your name while tossing a beach ball. It's just like a call center. It's like the first day of training in a call center. Okay, everybody. Okay, tell me your name, Billy. Whoa, woo. Where did you come from? Where'd you go to high school? And you chant your name while tossing a beach ball. It's really stupid. And some guy in a matching polo shirt tells you, this will be the best 4 years of your life. Your future is ahead of you. And that guy's been working here since 2002 and cries in his Honda Civic on lunch breaks. This is, these people are not living illustrious lives, but they're selling you a dream. They're selling you a fantasy. So once you accept, go to school, you go through orientation, you pick a dorm to live in. Because you have to live on campus because they make their money off of room and board by milking you for room and board. So you have to pick a green to live on, and I picked East Green because it was the closest to the art building, which was Siegfried Hall. So I was living in Washington Hall and East Green, and, basically dorm life is just basically a youth hostel from hell, okay? You get a twin bed, a desk the size of a TV tray. My desk was this old metal desk from like the 1940s. That didn't have any drawers. It just had 2 shelves on it, and it had scratches and initials carved into it and things like that. It was painted like this weird, like flesh grayish color. Weird. And you get a roommate who talks to his pet lizard. In my case, I had a roommate named Gary, and Gary never spoke to me. He never spoke to me. And he was just like sit there, listen to music and bob his head, and I'd walk in and he'd go, hey dude. That's all he'd say. And he smoked cigarettes, and I don't smoke. I've never smoked. And one day he joined Sigma Chi fraternity, and he disappeared. He was never in the room. Thank God the guy joined Sigma Chi. He was never there. He had no belongings in the room. He had very few items of clothing. He was really weird, a really weird dude. I have a friend from high school that went to like Kent State, and the guy that roomed with him was in ROTC. He was one of these army guys. And I guess the guy was cleaning his rifle one day and pointed it at my friend to his head and said, man, I don't like you. And that's so freaking weird. Like today, they would have had the army surrounding the building to take the guy away. You're going to meet some really freaking weird people if you've never been to college and you're in your dorm. You have to share bathrooms in your dorm. Hope you like hair clogged drains, vomit stained floors, overflowing toilets, and mystery stains. All kinds of weird things. Beer cans, bottles, cigarettes, vomit in the hallways. Every Friday, sometimes Tuesday, could be any day of the week, because this is the first time a lot of people have ever been away from home, and they're living it up like it's 1999. It's kind of like camping. If the campground was indoors and full of hormonal 19-year-olds and microwave ovens eating pizza and microwave ramen, it's really a weird environment. It's not a healthy environment. I didn't like living in the dorms. Step 8. I'm kind of flip-flopping thing. Before you even get to the dorms, your family has to take you to school. Right? I didn't have a car. I drove, but I didn't own my own car. So in my family, there was this huge freaking uprising in my family because my mom drove, but she didn't want to drive. She was afraid of driving long distances. And she had this brand new Chevy Cavalier, and she wanted my sister. She wanted it to be a family thing. She wanted the family to take me down and drop me off to school. She wanted it to be a special moment. And she asked my sister and brother-in-law to drive me down with her, right? And there's a huge fight between all of them because they didn't want to do it. And my sister and brother-in-law were saving money for a house, and it was going to take money out of their budget. And it was this horrible uprising, and my mother and my brother-in-law and sister all got in a fight on the way down, and they ignored my mother on the way home. They wouldn't even speak to her. And from that point forward, they barely spoke to my mother ever again. That's beside the point. But in a traditional sense, I remember they dropped me off. They put me into Washington Hall in my room. My mom was a little bit sad. My dad wasn't there because he was off drunk somewhere. He hadn't died yet. He was off drinking it up somewhere. Mom and dad had been divorced. But in the traditional sense, mom cries, dad pretends not to, and suddenly you're standing in a dorm room with nothing but a box. A bunch of boxes, a box fan, and crippling anxiety. Now, I didn't have crippling anxiety. I remember vividly looking out the window, seeing them drive away, and I went, girls. Look at all the girls. I was obsessed with finding girls and getting laid. And I was a little homesick, but not too much. I mean, I really liked being on my own. I like being alone. Now, some kids are on their own for the first time ever, and they go berserk. No curfews, no structure, just freedom and fear. I didn't see a lot of fear. I didn't see a lot of kids with fear. And it kind of hit you. It does kind of hit you. What did I just sign up for? But I made friends really quick. It's my friend Pete, who I've now known for 40, how long have I known Pete? 41 years. He's still a friend of mine. He knocked on my door one day. He's like, hey, you want to go throw the Frisbee around? I said, sure. And we ran out to the main green up on East Green, and we threw the Frisbee and the football around all the time. And so you're going to meet some interesting people. You're going to meet people from all over the world. All over the country, too. This is the first time I'd ever met people from New Jersey and New York and Pennsylvania, and I met some people from Michigan. I met all kinds of people. Not just my freshman year, but all 4 years. And you're going to go through all this, and you're going to get in the storm, and you're going to be like, first, you will be a little bit like struck by the newness of it, and like, what do I do? Where do I go? I remember walking through the lobby of my dorm, and there was a TV room, and I went in there to watch TV, and there was a bunch of guys in there just watching TV. At night, we'd go in there and watch Saturday Night Live for those of us that weren't going uptown and getting wasted. And you're going to be in this like youth utopia with all these kids, men and women, wandering around like little puppy dogs who've just been given a box of rubber balls to chase. And you're going to be kind of lost, but you're going to find your way. But the overall thing is you're basically living in a little bubble, a youth utopia, where they've sold you a fantasy. And they've sold you the idea that you're going to have fun, and this is the rest of your life. Now, let me show you what I studied the first couple of years I went to high university. So these are my transcripts from Ohio University. I attended Ohio University from September of 1984 until June of 1988. And as you see here up at the top, it says, I guess I graduated June 11th of 1988. I was in the Scripps College of Communications. Though I don't think it was called the Scripps College of Communications back then. I think it was just called the College of Communications. My degree was a Bachelor of Science in Communications. My program was Organizational Communication. I finally majored in that. Organizational Communication was a degree that I was sold and told that it would help me go out into the corporate world and help companies streamline their internal communication structures. Okay? And that degree was supposed to get me a job paying good money. I was sold and told that. Now, I started off as an art major. I started off as a fine art major in film. I switched to fine art, then I switched to graphic design and illustration. Just within the first year, I had no idea what I wanted to be when I grew up. Okay. The degree I finally selected, Organizational Communications, near the end of my senior year, about halfway through my senior year, a couple things happened to me, okay? About at the end of my sophomore year, I had a review with my student advisor, and your student advisor is just like a graduate student that has an office in the Fine Arts building, and they sit down with you and they review your portfolio and they review your grades and they review what you want to be when you grow up. Well, this woman sat down with me and said, well, Pete, I like your work and stuff, but with what you're doing in illustration, graphic design, you've got a couple of choices. You can become a teacher or you can work at Kinko's. Now, Kinko's at the time was a big thing. It was brand new on the scene, but it was basically just a fancy print shop. And I didn't want to be a teacher. For the first year in college, for the first 2 summers in college, the summer before college, and I think the summer after my freshman year, I worked at a playground. It was basically a preschool where I taught arts and crafts to K through 8. And I can tell you this, that those kids, the older kids, the 7th and the 8th graders, were freaking bastards, and they made me realize I didn't want to be an art teacher. So I knew I didn't want to be a teacher, and I knew I didn't want to work at Kinko's. So after my sophomore year, I started looking into changing my degree to something that I thought would be more lucrative, would get me a real job in the outside, in the world, in the real world once I graduated. I was also very aware of my financial situation and that the loans were stacking up. I was very aware of how expensive it was being. Much of my upbringing and being very poor because of my father's alcoholism, I was very aware of money. I was very self-conscious about money, very tight with the money, and I didn't want to stay in school for a long period of time. I didn't want to go deep into debt. I was very aware of what debt was, and I was very aware of how you had to be financially accountable in real world, or you get kicked out of your house. We were evicted from our house when I was a kid in 1970 because Dad couldn't pay the bills. I didn't want to see that happen to me. Much of my life has been driven by the ghosts of my mother and my father and their addiction to booze. And I was very aware of it at the time. My mother had sobered up. She was sober and never saw her. I hadn't seen her drunk since 1974, which is a whole nother story. My point being is when I went to college, I was very aware of financial accountability. I didn't want to go down the path that my parents went down. I wasn't about to get evicted from any place or have the sheriff show up at the door. Another thing that happened to me after my freshman year, during the spring of my sophomore year, my mother got sick. She was diagnosed with COPD and emphysema, and she was 100% disabled, and she could no longer work. So the entire thing changed. So I had to think about that. I had to think about, Mom was home alone by herself. All 3 of my siblings had moved out and gotten married. They lived in different parts of the country. I was the only person around for my mom, and I definitely was thinking, what's next? I had to think about those things. So after my sophomore year, when my mother got sick, I had to look at my future and think, well, what degree that I select is going to get me a job outside of school? What's most likely to find me a job? Will it be an art degree? Will it be a communications degree with an emphasis in business management and public speaking? And I elected to choose communications because I thought it would give me a better job outside of school, and it didn't. So all the choices, all the thoughts, all the worrying, all the strategy that I put into place for after school preparation made no difference whatsoever. And that's the complete truth. I still stayed with my mother at home, but I still didn't find a job for almost 2 years after college, a real job. The only reason I found something was because a friend of mine from high school, Allison, she called me up and offered me a job at her place. If it weren't for Allison, I never would have had a real job in telecommunications. Fortunately for her, I had a good career for about 10 years in telecom. My total time in telecom was probably about 14 years. But outside of that, I don't see that my degree really helped me anything other than maybe get my foot in the door because people saw I had a degree. Whether they checked to see if I really had a degree, I doubt it. I probably could have just put on the resume, I've got a degree, because back then I don't know how they would have verified it. Unless they called the school and said, hey, does this guy have a degree? So I went through a lot of things, a lot of strategy, and a lot of thought went into school for me. I was drinking, I was partying, I was chasing girls, but I was really putting a lot of thought into my future, but it didn't matter. I'm telling you right now, it doesn't matter. They sold me a pipe dream. And then after I switched my degree to communications, I sat down with my new student advisor in the School of Communications, and that person told me, in order to make a degree in organizational communication stick and make it work in the real world, you really need to dual major in public relations in the School of Journalism. And she said that would take you another year and a half of study. So I would have been in school a total of 5.5 years and going in debt another like $5,000 to $10,000. And I said, I can't do that. I just don't have the money. I was looking at the finances and the money that was stacking up just within 4 years. And what they try to do is they try to sell you on extending your stay. They got to get more money out of you, so they try to get you to get a dual major. I had to dual major, they told me. I was almost done with school, and then by the way, you really should dual major in public relations if you want to make this degree stick in the real world. Bullshit. The problem is that in the corporate world, back then there were public relations departments, but they were only in the really big companies like British Petroleum and in the big giant banks. They all have public relations firms that handle a lot of the PR stuff, okay? But the little tiny companies don't have PR firms. There's no need to have a PR firm. And unless you get hired by a Fortune 500 company, what are you going to do with a PR degree? They're useless. So is a degree in organizational communications. Look, I have a fraternity brother that just got a degree in organizational communications from Ohio University. God bless you. He says it's helped him and it's really benefited him in the corporate world. That's great. I found no use for it. Never did. I didn't understand how to apply it in the real world. To this day, I still don't. So that's kind of just a 50,000 foot overview of my experience at college and why I made the changes I made. And I'm going to go in and show you some of my transcripts here in the classes I took. I blacked out my grades. I blacked out my GPA and all those things on here. Now, what I've told you in other videos is you don't know what to take. And they tell you you're going to take these required classes, but you have electives too. Now, the electives I chose, now down here, this is my fall quarter, 1984 to 1985, September 10th through November 21st of 1984. I took 14 hours of classes. Maybe it was 13 hours. I know what this 14 is over here. I took basic drawing because I was an art major. I took racquetball. It's come in handy in after school. Very handy. play racquetball. Never. I've never played racquetball since that 8 a.m. class. Math 101, and I had to take psychology. That I took psychology because I was kind of interested in it. I had a psychology class in high school. I'll take it at the college level. And this is where I just don't understand the things you're going to take in college. Now, I took basic drawing. That was part of my art curriculum. But racquetball I took just because I didn't know what else to take, and I needed to take something to fill up the hours. You had to take at least a minimum of 13 hours per quarter to be a full-time student. So I just grabbed it. I was athletic at the time. I was, I was skinnier. I was like 170 pounds soaking wet with a full head of hair. Math 101 I had to take because on the ACT, I failed the math, and I had to retake algebra and math at the college level, which is another ripoff, because if you don't pass the scores on the ACT or the SAT, they make you take math again your freshman year, and you have to get a B or better to stay in school. So I took basic math to freshen up on my addition and subtraction and fractions and all that stuff. Then general psychology, it was a cool class. It was in a huge lecture hall taught by Dr. Paula Popovich. I'll never forget her. She just really stood out to me. And I really enjoyed that class. And I learned a lot about psychology. And it was in a huge lecture hall, like 200-300 kids. It was at, I don't know what time of the day it was at. I think it was at 8 in the morning as well. But it was maybe a quarter mile from my dorm room, just down the street. It was a good class, and I actually seriously considered studying psychology, which I probably should have studied that above and beyond anything else. Then my second quarter, this is back during the quarters. They weren't on semesters. Winter quarter, this is from January of 85 until March of 85. I took English, freshman composition, writing and rhetoric, which I don't have any recollection of that class. Interpersonal communication, fundamentals of human communication. I took that because I had an interest in public speaking, because I did very well in public speaking in high school. My teacher told me I had a future in it. I find that there really is no future in rhetoric and public speaking, and you're not gonna get hired writing speeches for Martin Luther King or President Trump or whoever it happens to be. The chances of you getting hired to be a speechwriter for somebody are very slim. They're looking for Ivy League people to do that stuff. I took algebra because basic math was a prerequisite. I had to pass that. I got an A, I think, in basic math. Then the next quarter, I took algebra. And algebra was taught by a guy that was Vietnamese that could barely speak English. Nothing against Vietnamese people, but I take the sine, the cosine, I had no idea what this guy was saying. It was a very sobering moment, because I had a very hard time understanding this gentleman. Then I took Art 101, which is two-dimensional design, which this is back before computers. This is 1985, 84, 85. And two-dimensional design now is done through Illustrator and InDesign. This is all done with X-Acto knives, rubber cement, and, colored paper. Construction paper. You had to cut things out. You had to draw it and cut it out and paste it to construction board or some type of cardboard. So my first semester, I took 14 hours of classes. My second quarter took 17 hours of classes. And that's, right now I can tell you that none of these classes so far in real life since I graduated in 88 have ever helped me. I've never used psychology. I've never used my public speaking skills in a professional level other than here on YouTube, and I'm just winging it here half the time. So racquetball, I had a friend, he had a choice of racquetball or astronomy. He took astronomy. I took racquetball. Math, I rarely use math in the real world, and if I need math, I pull out a calculator. Writing, I don't remember this class at all. I do write. I've written a few books, but I can't say that college has helped me with my books. My one book, Press One for Murder, has been fairly successful. I think I wrote a pretty good book, despite not being trained as a writer, I guess. But algebra and math, I don't understand why we have to take algebra. I don't understand. It has no useful purpose in the real world whatsoever in any way, shape, or form. They say it's designed to make you think outside the box and help your critical thinking skills. I beg to differ. Two-dimensional design. I've learned more. I've taken classes at community colleges about 2D design. Since using Illustrator and InDesign, I learned far more than I ever did from this class. It was a woman who just walked around and gave you the project, and she kind of just walked around the room and looked over your shoulder and said, "Oh, have you considered trying that? Have you considered trying this?" She talked about spatial relations and positive and negative and space in the composition, things like that. I don't remember much about the class other than I cut my finger open with an X-Acto knife. I don't remember much about it. Spring semester, my first year, was Intro to Graphics. That's a graphic design class because I was considering becoming a graphic designer. I have no idea what that class is. I don't remember it. Drawing 228. Drawing 228 was a drawing class. They'd bring models into this class. Drawing 101, basic drawing, was taught by my first quarter. My fall quarter was taught by a guy named Bob Borchard. He looked like Santa Claus. He had white hair. He looked more like Burl Ives. You know who he is, chubby guy. He would just set up still life. In the room we draw the still lifes. I remember one time he set up a rock, and he had the rock pushing through like a paper bag. And he went, "Oh my God, look at that." And we're all like, "What?" There's this kids, 15 of us in a room. He's like, "Oh, that looks like sexual penetration." And we're all like, "What?" But drawing 228 was a weird class. It was really weird. The teacher looked a little bit like John Lennon. She had this long stringy hair, wire rim glasses. And one day she said, "Okay, everybody, we're going on a field trip to the college morgue." And I don't remember my thoughts were at the time, other than it was kind of weird. I'm like, okay, it's kind of cool. It's kind of weird because they have the School of Medicine on campus. They have the College of Osteopathic Medicine. And they had a morgue where they would keep cadavers and cut them open and stuff to do, medical classes and stuff. So she walks us down to the morgue like little ducklings. And I remember seeing this poor guy out in a slab, this old guy, rigor mortis. And the only thing I remember is how big his member was. And the mortician or whatever that was there said, that happens because when you die, all the fluids kind of go out to the extremities and you bloat and things like that. And I remember seeing this old woman dead on the slab, all wrinkly. It's kind of gross, and it was fascinating but scary at the same time. They had big like Tupperware vats, like this high off the ground, filled with formaldehyde and body parts. But I'm thinking, why are we doing this? Because I think her idea was kind of like Da Vinci. Da Vinci studied bodies. He studied dead bodies in the morgue, I think, and he would do anatomical drawings of the muscle structure, the ligaments, and the bones. But we weren't doing that. It was just a one-day thing. It was like she just wanted to blow the day off, and we went down and looked at dead bodies in a morgue. It didn't help us really understand the structure of human anatomy. Could have gotten more out of just seeing pictures on a projector on the wall. Then the class that was really that I've told you all about is Philosophy 101. This class was dismal. Atrocious. This was an atrocious class, and it was spring, and the school is in southeastern Ohio. In the spring, it gets hot and it's very humid. None of the buildings at the time were air conditioned, so we're sitting in this mini lecture hall. It seats maybe 100 kids, and the professor, the wall. It's just like in that movie, Back to School with Rodney Dangerfield. We walk in the room. There's like, the seats are stepped up to the wall, about 100 seats, and the teacher walks in, and behind him are these floor-to-ceiling windows, the old colonial windows, the slider windows. And this guy walks in, and from the day he walked in, he talked incoherently. He would be like, today we're going to talk about Socrates, and Well, the basic philosophy of Socrates and being a sophist is this, Socrates. And then he'd turn and, you'd have a pen. You'd have chalk. You'd have chalk. Back when they had chalkboards. And he'd turn and he'd write. He'd write on the chalkboard. Here, let me pull up a blank page. Here you go. He'd write, Socrates. But then, and he did this a lot, and he was dripping with sweat. He was just sweating all the time. It was hot. It was hot in that room. Then he'd go back and write on, and he'd go, philosophy. But you've got Socrates and sophist, and then if you got a sophist, and he wrote on top of everything. He kept writing on top of what he had already written, and he wasn't making any sense. And in my 18-year-old mind, I was 19 by this time, which makes no difference really, I thought he was just being eccentric. I thought, it's a philosophy class. I didn't know about philosophy other than, there were these people in robes in the thousands of years ago that walk around going, why is there air? Why do we breathe air? And why do birds fly? I just figured he was being eccentric. So as the class went on throughout the spring semester, I started telling my friends in the dorm about it. This guy named Ron. I said, hey, do you want to come to my class, my philosophy class? This professor's really out of his mind. He's crazy. He's really funny. It's really bizarre. So I started inviting people into the class, and they would watch, and we'd sit at the back of the room and just laugh at this guy because it was just so bizarre. He just made no sense whatsoever. So about halfway through spring quarter, we come into class one day, and the teacher's not there, and in walks this guy with long gray hair and a beard, a gray beard. He's really skinny. He's maybe 5 feet tall. He's wearing Birkenstock sandals. He's got an arm that's shrunken. Looks like it was shrunken at birth, and he's got one regular arm. He's got a cigarette in the shrunken arm. And he's like, well, I got some bad news for all of you today. And I remember the professor's name, but I won't repeat it. Professor Burgundy, let's say his name is Burgundy. Professor Burgundy won't be returning. Unfortunately, Mr. Burgundy has had a nervous breakdown, and he won't be returning to class. I'll be taking over for him. Turns out this guy was the head of the philosophy department. And my mind is blown. I'm like thinking philosophy, wow, you're here to have your mind blown. This must be some type of experiment, man, where they're trying to teach us the eccentricities of philosophy by bringing these freaky people into the class. And this guy, I still to this day have absolutely no idea whatsoever what that class is about. I learned nothing about philosophy, even from the head of the philosophy department. It was atrocious. And if I had any ability to think outside the box or stood up for myself, I would have gone down to the philosophy department or the head of the school and demanded my money back. It was horrible. I got a D in the class. And to this day, I have no idea what the class was about. So you're going to run into this. And what happens is, you get professors that get seniority. They get tenure. They get tenure in the school. And after they reach a certain level, I guess it's almost impossible to fire these guys. And I'll tell you more about it later in another class with a teacher had Ethered Eldridge. But you get tenure. This poor guy, the first teacher we had a breakdown, and I guess he was in the hospital recovering, and this new guy was just as bad as he was. He made a little bit more sense, but it was awful. So that was philosophy, telecom, media perspectives. I'm not certain what that was. I think that was a class where they studied and analyzed television and movies. If I remember it correctly, it was a pretty good analysis of how they romanticize certain topics in film and in TV, but I don't remember. Now I'm going to go over just briefly, go over the second half of my fall. What is this? This takes me up through my sophomore year and beginning of my junior year. So I'm just going to summarize this. So in fall of 1985, which would have been the beginning of my sophomore year, I took Intro to Cultural Anthropology. Seeing and Knowing Visual Art. I have no idea what that class was. I don't remember it. Illustration. That class was all done with rapidograph pens. There was no Illustrator. There was no InDesign. It was all done with pens and pencils and stuff like that. It was an okay class. I don't remember much about it either. Inco 103, which was Introduction to Public Speaking. Ladies and gentlemen, if you want to major in rhetoric or public speaking, I'd advise highly against it. It will not get you a career. There are no careers in public speaking unless you are well connected with the political organizations that are looking for people to write speeches for them. If you're well connected with somebody who's running for office, don't bother. Don't bother. I took it for 4 years. It's a complete waste of your money, complete waste of your time. And quite frankly, I didn't learn anything about public speaking. They didn't talk about things. I learned things about public speaking on YouTube that they never mentioned in these classes. It was a waste of my time and money. I took my winter quarter of sophomore year in interpersonal communications was my degree. It wasn't my degree, but it ended up becoming my degree. I was an art major at this time. I was an illustration and graphic design major. Inco 206, communication, interpersonal relations. I don't remember what that was. Then I took anthropology again. Now let me go back to anthropology. Anthropology class, and both anthropology classes, another huge waste of time. I remember this guy named William Wood talking about the Yanomama tribe and Wanda the Witch Queen that would shake her eyes and her big long fingernails, and she'd run around a campfire with all the crazy little tribes people, and we'd all make fun of the guy after class. I learned nothing in any way, shape, or form that I can remember about this class, about anthropology, other than Wanda the Witch Queen and the Yanomama tribe, which I have no idea where they were located or what they were or why we had to learn about them or why I was in that class. I remember myself, my friend Pete, and my friend Addison were in the classes together, and we would just walk back to the fraternity house just like laughing our asses off because the class is so ridiculous and stupid. I mean, Addison might have gotten more out of it because he was a far more of an intellectual person at the time than the rest of us. Sorry, Addison, if you're watching, but, you know, I think you're more of an intellectual than a lot of people I know. That's not. I don't need to apologize for that. But those classes were a waste. And then I took my winter quarter. I don't even have any idea what Geography 201 is. I don't remember this one at all. Environment and Man. No idea what that was. Inco 205. Technology Group Discussion. No idea what that was. I can't even remember it. Spring semester or spring quarter English literature, men and women. I think that was taught by a guy named Dave Atkinson or something, or I think I remember that class. He liked me. This guy, I wrote a little short story about driving to a Cleveland Browns football game on the Shoreway, and he just loved it. And he thought I should change my degree to English. I would have been, it doesn't matter what, pick your poison. Whichever degree you pick. It could have been English, it could have been basket weaving, it could have been art. It would have all resulted in the same thing afterwards, nothing. It was an interesting class, but I don't remember much about it. Inco 342, Communication and Persuasion. This was a class to teach you how to persuade people. I kept the book for like 20 years after college. Why, I don't know. I never learned how to persuade people. I'm not a very persuasive person in the textbook form. This was an elective, Social Work 101, Intro to Wellness and Social Work, I think it is. And this was a class that I learned all about different things with dealing with people with different issues. It was a real basic class. It was an interesting class. I don't remember much about it, though I think I got an A or a B in it. Painting, 205 was a waste. Still at this time, I'm still an art major. But look at this. Now I'm an art major. Now I've now taken, up to this point, I've taken 6 quarters of college classes. Okay? And my point here is I've taken 6 quarters of college classes. Probably close to 100 hours of classes, right? And so far, I've only taken a few classes that have anything to do with my degree. Most of my classes have been just total BS. Nothing is going to help me with being an artist. Nothing that's going to help me be an illustrator. Nothing that's going to help me be a graphic design major, other than the classes I took. The painting class I had was, I vaguely remember it. It was just still lifes. The teacher would come in. I don't remember who the teacher was. They would set up still lifes, and I remember the one still life they had that I painted was a license plate, with like a little bronze statue or something, and a bunch of junk just laid out on a table near a window. And I have one painting from that class where I just sat at the window and I drew the houses outside the window. I painted the windows outside the thing, outside the art building. Across the parking lot, there were a bunch of student houses, old houses built like in the early 1900s. I painted those, and my mother loved the painting. I hated it. It was just something I tossed off. And I got an A in that class, but I don't remember anything else about that class. And then as we go into my junior year was a real tumultuous time for me because my father died. My father was murdered in January of 87, which would have been probably, it would have been the beginning of my junior year, or beginning of winter semester, my junior year, but fall quarter of my junior year, 86 to 87, I took computer science survey, which, this is the beginning of really depth study about computer technology. I have no idea what that class is about. I don't remember at all. I think they tried to teach us basic programming in basic language, which I was not. I could do it now, but back then I had no interest in programming at all. And I'm pretty sure I got a C or a B in that class. Listening, Inco 104, because by this time I was kind of tinkering around with the idea of switching majors to communications and interpersonal communications. This listening class was horrible. We had a professor named Professor Carlson. He looked like Humpty Dumpty. He always came in wearing corduroy jackets with a corduroy vest, and he talked like this. And he just said, "We're going to talk about listening today." And I have no idea. This was going to be my degree, my major. I have no idea what that class is about. Not because I wasn't listening, not because I'm incompetent, because he gave us a book called The Listener. And he said, "I want you to read this book called The Listener, and you're going to learn all about listening." And it was this vague philosophical book that kind of danced around the idea that really it was these people in the story would come in and talk to this guy who was sitting in a chair, and he would just listen to them. The whole book was like that. And I think you're supposed to just get the idea that the idea behind listening is to just listen and not, try to respond to what people are saying. But he never came out and said that the class was horrible. Introduction to Communication Theory, I have no idea what that one was. And then alcoholism is another social work class, because I was tinkering in the idea with working in social work because alcoholism was a big thing in my family. And I was thinking of becoming a counselor. Thank God I didn't do that. I don't think I could handle it. So that's my first 2 years. I'm not going to show you all 4 years because I think you get the idea. This is 2 years of my life, 2 years and a quarter. And so far I've taken anthropology, and I've taken public speaking and racquetball. And by the time I left school, I was $10,000 in debt. I don't understand. And what they tell you and how they sell this to you is all of this information is going to give you a well-rounded education. It's going to give you a well-rounded life so you can walk out into the world and have a better understanding of how the world works. But the way the world really works is once you finally get a job, a real job, nobody is standing around talking about the Yanomama tribe and Rhonda the Witch Queen, and they're shaking her eyes and her fingernails. Ha! Nobody is philosophizing about how people listen. Nobody is going off and playing racquetball. I never picked up a racquetball racket again. From 1984, it's been, 44 years ago? I haven't played racquetball since. Or it's not 44 years ago, it's 36 years ago or something like that. I haven't played racquetball since. 41 years ago. Sorry, my math ain't good. That's why I had to take basic math and algebra again. These are not things that you'll ever use. And I swear to you in the Bible, you'll never use algebra. There's no need for algebra. All it did was frustrate me and upset me. It's upset me since 7th grade or 6th grade. I remember the first time I got to take it. And the whole thing, and I'll finish with this, is in my family, everything you took in high school, junior high school and high school, was predicated upon the eventual outcome of you going to college. So every math class I took, geometry, everything was designed to get you prepared for the eventual going to college. And then college, after that, I can tell you this, none of it made any difference in my life. The person you see before you, whether you think I'm an eloquent speaker or not, I can speak pretty good on my feet. I have a pretty good determination. I'm a very creative person, but almost everything you see about me here is because of the people that raised me. My mom and my dad and my brothers and my sister were all well-spoken, naturally gifted, intelligent people. Not that we were Einsteins, not that we're in, but just the environment I was in, even though there's a lot of chaos and dysfunction, we could think pretty well for ourselves. I don't attribute any of my success or lack thereof to college. I attribute more of the lack of success and the frustration, depression, because of the false and the lies and the false narrative that they sell you to get to college, thinking it's going to be something. And people will tell you, well, it's a gateway, it's a doorway into that good job. No, my first good job I got wasn't because of my degree. I got it because a friend of mine from high school called me up at home one day and said, hey, you want to come work at this company I just started working at? We're going to pay $16,500 a year. And at the time, I was making $5 an hour as a night auditor. No. I ended up working and I was working in a night auditor, but I ended up working in a factory for $5 an hour. I was working in a factory pasting covers on college textbooks or college library books. And I was going to more than double my salary by going to work for her. It wasn't because I had a degree. Maybe because I had a degree, they considered me. I don't know. But they hired people in there that didn't have degrees, so my degree didn't matter. One of my best friends there that I worked with for a few years while I worked there had no degree. So what difference does it make is what I'm saying. It makes no difference. It turned out to be who I knew that got me the good jobs. And from that point forward, every job I got from 1990 until 2000, for those 10 years, every single job I got from that point forward was based off of people I knew and networked with within the telecommunications industry. It had absolutely nothing to do with my degree. Plain and simple. So, I don't mean to be a downer, but the truth of the matter is your college degree doesn't really get you that much. And, some people say just major in something, just pick something and major in it because it doesn't really matter. It could be basket weaving or it could be, unless you want to be an engineer. I've got a nephew, Andy, is a successful engineer. He's a very smart guy, but he's got an engineering degree. You need a degree to understanding engineering and the math behind it and all that stuff. But you don't need a degree to be an artist. You don't need a degree to make films. You don't need a degree to sit in an office all day and move paper from one stack to the other. My wife has a degree in political science, but she works in business now. She doesn't work in political science. Her degree has nothing to do, and it didn't prepare her for what she was going to hit and face in the corporate world. Ladies and gentlemen, it's 2025, and colleges around the country are pumping up philosophy majors like it's the Renaissance. Meanwhile, companies are hiring coders, UX designers, digital marketers, and data analysts, none of which get more than a footnote in most university programs. College needs to get out of the academic stone age and start teaching skills that lead to actual jobs in the real world. How many English majors does the world need? How useful is an English major or a history major? You've got to sit down with your children before they invest your money and their futures in useless degrees like communications, history, and English and philosophy. How do these colleges and universities live with themselves, knowing that they're taking advantage of the youth of our country, selling them degrees that are useless in the real world, and pushing them out into the real world with no usable skills? My God, when is it going to change? Who oversees these places? It's got to change now. Otherwise, you may as well just go to work at Walmart and just skip school altogether. So that's my experience in the first 2 years of college. And I know this is a long one. I'm going to break this up into 2 parts. But college is a lie. It's an absolute lie, and I don't care if I get banned or shadow banned for this. People got to know about this. And it's the same. This is 40 years ago that I graduated from high school. And college hasn't changed in 40 years. It's the same horrible curriculum nationwide. Doesn't matter if it's an Ivy League school or a commercial or a public school. It's the same garbage. It's the same garbage, and no one's ever explained it to any of us. Why did I have to know algebra? Why did I have to take cultural anthropology? Why did I need to learn about the Yanomama tribe to go sit and design phone circuits in an office for 8 hours a day? I didn't. It's the goddamn truth. And there's people out there that will just vow that this is the only way to make a living, and it's not. I've got a guy I went to high school with, a guy named Doug, who went to work for the water company in the town I grew up in, and he's retired already. Me, I'm almost 60, and I'm sitting here peddling myself, schlepping around this goddamn YouTube channel, trying to sell myself as a photographer and a musician. Yeah, I like it, but it doesn't pay the bills. My degree means nothing, and the older you get and the older that degree is, they don't care about it. They just don't give a crap. And if you tell people you graduated in 1988 with a degree in communications, they're like, okay, next please. Nice meeting you, Pete. Talk to you later. See ya. I'm telling you, these degrees have expiration dates too. All right, guys. I hope you learned something here. If not, I'm sorry. But you got to learn. You got to learn that these degrees and the colleges that we go to are just selling you fantasies or selling you pipe dreams in a youth utopia. Have a good day.
Yes, I understand you now.